I'm the Director of Annual Giving for Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm primarily responsible for corporate giving programs for the hospital.
Okay. So in very simple terms, kind of explain to us the gist of your position.
My position is to work with individuals and corporations to come up with sophisticated and comprehensive marketing and philanthropic programs for them to ultimately create a giving revenue stream for the hospital. So that might be for everything from an outright corporate gift to developing a custom cause marketing campaign or a product promotion to help drive business for those companies, but in turn, there's a philanthropic benefit for our hospital.
Okay. What career and education path kind of led you to where you're at now? So, what did you study in college, and then kind of what positions did you take early in your career to kind of get you to where you're at?
Sure. I studied political communication at Ohio University, and upon graduation, I went directly into nonprofit with the American Cancer Society. I think my initial thought in college was I wanted to get into government relations and advocacy, and nonprofit certainly provided for a great arena to explore those opportunities. Working for an organization like the Cancer Society, you're on the front line for not only raising money, but also working to open up the doors in Congress and within the state to help pass cancer-friendly legislation. So my first couple years with the Cancer Society, I worked directly in development, doing special events. It's kind of the entree into the field is putting in those hours with special events, working in the community, the grassroots fundraising. And then I got a little bit more into advocacy and government relations, where I would work with our state leaders, local leaders, federal officials, congresswomen, congressmen, to help introduce our cancer advocates to them in the efforts to help pass legislation. From there, I kind of went into the management sphere with, I served as an executive director for a 3-county office in Northeast Ohio, which was a nice experience because you do a little bit of everything when you're kind of managing at that local level. You're doing advocacy, fundraising, of course, managing employees, program development, and that's really kind of what you see with a lot of smaller nonprofits too. There's one director who may have a small staff, but is really responsible for a number of different areas. And then I moved into a larger region and went back strictly to development with a larger staff and a little more segmentation of what we do. From there, about 4 years ago, my gosh, it's been 6 years. Sorry about that. 6 years ago, I went to Nationwide Children's Hospital. And from there, I've been in my current position of really focusing on corporate-based fundraising.
Okay. Take us through briefly what a typical day would be like for you. Understanding, of course, there's probably some variation in your job from day to day, but
Sure.
What would be kind of a typical day from when you get to the office to when you leave?
Most of the day I'm out in the field, out in the community. I mean, fundraising now is really relying on community-based fundraising, and the days of corporations cutting large checks are few and far between. So it requires us to be much more sophisticated on how we can work with a business to generate fundraising dollars for the hospital. So most of my day it's really like a field trip every day. I'm going out and learning about different businesses in the community. I might be in a box factory one day and learning all about the box industry and how we can make that work for them. And the next day I might be at an auto dealer and learning who they're trying to market to and what their interests are from a community relations and philanthropy standpoint. So the majority of the day I'm spending out in the field, and then after kind of gathering that initial discovery meeting with these companies, I would come back and develop an action plan that I can send their way in terms of teaming up with us. The ultimate goal is not just for them to cut us a check and for me to go take a picture and smile. I mean, that's great. It's easy work when a company's that generous just to do that. but we are really aiming to create a philanthropic experience for these companies. So it takes a lot more work, but it pays off in the end because we have a company now that's completely engaged with us because we spent the time to figure out, how we can maximize their gift, how we can take philanthropy and impact their marketing.
Great.
Yep.
What would you say is the thing that you like best about your position?
Well, raising money for sick and injured kids is a pretty good feeling. I'll tell you, I think the best thing about working at Nationwide Children's Hospital is kind of the jealousy factor you have from your peers in the community. It's a place when you tell someone you work there, people get a little jealous of it. They want to be a part of that. And I think it's because we're going to work every single day knowing we're doing something good. I think everybody has a skill set that can be applied to a variety of different industries. And I think you can find joy in just about anything you do, but it's hard not to walk through the halls of a hospital and see a 6-year-old with cancer and not have that feeling of evocative that you're really helping out this child.
On kind of the opposite side of that coin, what is one thing that you could do without? So, for example, if you thought of all responsibilities in your job, if you had to pick something that you could just kind of get rid of, what would it be?
Sure. Well, I think something I've grown accustomed to, but it's kind of hard to, and especially when you first start out in nonprofit, is that it's not a 9-to-5 job. And in many respects, at the level that I'm working at a reputable brand like the hospital, you're on constantly. We're in front of people. We meet so many people every day. People know we represent the hospital, so forgetting to shave and going out in sweatpants to the grocery store, oftentimes you kind of get caught. I don't make it sound like I'm a celebrity, but in some respects, you have a great responsibility to represent that brand. And I don't want to say I wouldn't do without that, but it kind of goes with one portion of the job that is hard, I think, for a lot of young professionals getting into it is, work doesn't end at 5 o'clock. So you're having committee meetings till 10 often, special events. We do special events that are 24-hour marathons, and that certainly can be draining on you. So I would think that's one thing that's kind of challenging for folks getting into the profession. Okay.
Top 3 skills necessary to be just excellent at what you do.
Wow. I would say, well, let me give this one some thought. That's a really good question. I think the ability to communicate across a variety of different work cultures and professionals is a big one. One day we might be in a warehouse of 500 employees and sharing the story of the hospital and trying to get them to rally for us, essentially, to do a special event. And the next day we might be on the other side of the desk of a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And while I think there are communication strategies that you have to apply across the board, it certainly changes with your environment as well, too. So I think that would be one thing. I think another skill set is understanding how volunteerism works and how community mobilization works. Many young professionals getting into this field, or any recent grads that are looking for work, you come out and you have businesses asking you for 3 to 5 years experience right away, and you're a senior graduating from college. I think one place to kind of help remedy that, and a great skill set to pick up in this field, is already being a volunteer in your community and understanding the importance of volunteering and community mobilization and what it means to be part of a community. I think to work in nonprofit, you have to understand that, because you have individuals that aren't being paid, but they're giving you a ton of hours and blood, sweat, and tears for a mission that they really care about. And if it's something you're not very connected with from the beginning, you have to learn how to empathize with that. So that's the second one. And I think the third one is just to be agile. For many nonprofits, this isn't the, you're not breaking the bank with your paycheck, or it's not always the most glamorous of jobs. So I think early on in your career, you certainly have to be pretty agile in understanding that you're going to have to pay your dues a little bit with this. You're not going to come right out of school making 80 grand and, working for some huge nonprofit. You may be answering the phones or taking out the trash. It's just getting in with the right company is probably the biggest advice I have folks that are looking to get involved in the nonprofit sector is find a company or a nonprofit that's credible and reputable in the community, a great brand, take the job they'll give you and work your way up.
So this final question kind of spins off of what you're just talking about. But if there's someone, for example, that wanted your job, they wanted to be where you're at in 5, 10 years or whatever, what are 2 things that they could do in the short term to start heading down that path?
It's a great question. I would say as much as you can get involved in every aspect of a nonprofit to begin with. So while many organizations are able to have the resources to kind of silo themselves, they have a professional who can work just in one area of giving or work in marketing, planned giving, just like any other business, there's various departments in the fundraising world. But I think even if it's not part of your typical job description, to be working with your supervisor, your manager, to learn those other skill sets. Because ultimately what you're going to find is as you go higher up the ladder and the job becomes more streamlined at other organizations, they want you to have all those skills. So if you've been focusing on special event fundraising, let's say, for 5 years, and you have no idea how to write a grant or help someone who may be preparing their will, who wants to leave a planned gift, you're going to be out of the dark. So I think that's probably one of the most important things I could tell someone looking to kind of move up in the nonprofit world is get a taste of everything. And I think that includes the mission too. It's really important to not just be Johnny Fundraiser in the community, being the guy that people know that guy's coming to you just to ask for money. You have to be able to sell the mission. So I think it's equipping yourself with that knowledge as well. And the other thing is kind of what I mentioned before, be willing to put in the hours and maybe taking that not so glamorous position to begin with. I think nonprofits outside of the private sector, or in comparison to the private sector, have a lot more opportunity to elevate at an exponential way. So I think that risk isn't as great in nonprofit. I think you can take that job, answering the phones, doing a couple events here and there, and then be into a director position a lot quicker than you might in the private sector. So being willing to do that, I think, is an important thing to look at.
Great.
Yep.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.